Haha! This is Labort, and these are the paints I used for Zombie Starlord. Now it's time for a shiny leather jacket. I know it's a zombie character, it shouldn't be that shiny, but even on the character card it looks quite nice. I covered the whole thing with thin layers of Wordbearer's Red. It's pretty much the same paint as Burnt Red from the Vallejo range, so use whichever you like or have. On the shadow areas, I don't cover the mini with maximum opacity, but on the highlight areas I work my way up to it. Once the main planes of light are sketched, I blend in the Wordbearer's Red layer with a thinner consistency, moving my brush from the black to the dark red areas and waiting for each layer to dry before applying the next one. The jacket is basically the eye candy part of the mini, so use Granny's butt cheek for smoothness reference when you work on those gradients. We start to reduce the highlight areas with a mix of Wild Rider Red and Mephisto Red. The midtone of the coat should be Wordbearer's Red, which is the dark red layer. To achieve this, we need to have that color present in a larger ratio compared to our highlights. So try to highlight around 50% of the surface and use thin layers to build up these highlights. We want to have this head as the focal point, so a bit more volume around the shoulders and the collar is alright, but curb those highlights around the arms and the back if you want to keep that dark red midtone. You can always go back with Wordbearer's Red if you feel like you over-highlighted a bit. Add some sunny skin tone to the Wild Rider Red and push the contrast more in the previous highlight layer. We have quite small surfaces to work with, so use thin layers to reach maximum opacity with the paint. This value will make the jacket more shiny and glossy looking, but it's very important you don't cover your previous layers with it entirely, or you'll lose some contrast and more saturation. Once we sketch these with thin layers, thin the paint to a glaze consistency and make the blends a little bit smoother. For the maximum value highlights, I use sunny skin tone, but in a very small ratio compared to the rest of the values. I go around the edge of the collar and highlight the arm and shoulders a little bit more. After we start working on the pants with a mix of London Grey and Nagarothite, the pants are almost black and not very reflective, so I go over the folds that face upward and use a thin layer consistency to build up the volumes. If you feel like you over highlighted the pants, just go back with black and glaze over this recent highlight so you can curb back the volumes. Then we start working on the boots, covering their whole surface with Rhinox hide using a base layer consistency, and do the same for the pouches, holster and the belt too. Try to be careful around the waist, don't hit the pants or the shirt or I will slap on your tiny hand. Working the highlights with Montfranc Brown. Now on the boots I wasn't really sure what they were made of because on the mini they look like they are metal, but on the card they are more ragged like a leather boot. So we are going to paint something in between. On the holsters and pouches try to cover the surface while leaving some recessed shadows around their binding. They are quite small so it's a little bit challenging, but if you use a nice brush that is pointy as a granny's nipple, you'll be fine. Reduce the highlight areas a little bit more with gold brown, so we can shift the mid-tone to a bit warmer tone and the top part of the knee pads and calves, and generally on the areas that face up. If you feel like you are fighting the paint for a nice coverage, the feeling is accurate, and you need multiple layers on each part. You can also use Ballard brown if you need a citadel equivalent. Let's push the contrast a little bit more by adding some sunny skin tone to the mix and edge highlight along the polygon shapes of the boots. I blackline between the armor panels of the boots with a thin layer consistency of black to make it more defined and clean looking. I highlight the belt buckle and the inside parts of the Walkman with neutral grey. I cover the frame of the Walkman with MacRae blue. And after that I highlight the upper half of the belt buckle with light grey, and I use Techlist blue on the lower half of the Walkman. Our shadows could use a little bit more depth, so I glazed over all the shadow areas with Nagarothite. I go over the shadowy parts of the boot, lower side of the torso and limbs that face towards the ground and the helmet to create some visual interest over these areas. I make multiple runs with this glaze to have some decent coverage. With that, Zombie Starlord is done and ready for the table. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you're interested in more Marvel Zombies content, consider joining my Patreon page, like these lovely people. Thanks to their support, I can create painting guides for Marvel Zombies and Massive Darkness 2, and a special shoutout goes to Colberic Dom, Trying to Paint Minis, Jonathan Mosner, Glitchy Macrash, Penoman45, and Michael Kerr. I hope your day will be as smooth as a granny's butt cheek.